Welcome to today's edition of Mental Health Matters. Today I have Don Harper on the show. Don is going to talk about his experience being in the military and what he's been doing since he's been out of the military. Get you something to drink and get you a snack and come on back. Good morning, Don. How are you doing this great sunny Saturday morning?
Good morning, Jesse. Yeah, I love the sun. I think it'd be a great day today. Thank you for having me.
Yes, absolutely. I appreciate you taking some time out to allow me to interview you. So why don't we start by you just telling the community a little bit about yourself, and we'll go from there.
Okay, yeah, thank you again. Yeah, my name is Don Harper. I've been living in the Sacramento community for about 30 years. I come from a military-minded family. I had my dad was I grew up in the Bay Area, and my dad was served in World War II.
Yeah.
He was an infantry officer in New Guinea, and he came back, raised a family, raised 4 boys, and my dad came back and never talked about his experience in the war at that time. You know, they came back and they just moved on with their lives. That generation did, and raised families, and they're part of the greatest generation of veterans. So I had a good role model as parents. They raised 4 brothers. All 4 of us served in the military.
Wow.
I had 3 of us served in Vietnam. I served in Vietnam as well. Uh, 2 were in the Army, or 1 was in the Army, 2 was in the Air Force, and I joined the Marines for I don't know what reason, but I did that back in the day. So 4 of us, we all went to high school, and then after high school, the Vietnam War was kicking in, and I thought it was my military duty at the time to go in and serve my country. So I joined the Marine Corps and went through boot camp and basic and infantry training, and found myself in Vietnam. I was I was a squad leader eventually, but I was with a combat unit in Vietnam up in I Corps of North Vietnam. Saw a lot of combat action up there. I was a infantry machine gunner, and then a squad leader, and I spent 13 months in Vietnam. And then I extended another 6 months in Vietnam as well. So I spent a lot of time in Vietnam. I had a brother served in Vietnam as well. He was in the Army. He's a crew chief operator on a helicopter, machine gunner and crew chief operator. And unfortunately, he served almost a year in Vietnam, but a month before he came back, his chopper got shot down, and he was wounded critically in Vietnam. And at the time, I was back home at the time when he got injured. He came back, he was critically injured, and he spent months, if not years, in the VA hospital. Had a bullet hit him actually right in the forehead, and he was brain damaged and had a lot of recovery at the VA for a long time. I took care of him after he left the VA for many, many years. He's my younger brother, so he and I were really close. He eventually, 15 years later, he died of his wounds because of Vietnam.
Wow.
I had another brother in Vietnam. He was in the Air Force, and he was on a bombardier navigator in the Air Force, an officer. And he did bombing runs up in northern Vietnam, and did that for almost 2 years in Vietnam. He came back himself, but he stayed in the military. And he stayed in there for 20 years and got out as a lieutenant colonel. My other brother served in the Air Force, but unfortunately, he didn't go to Vietnam, but he served his country and got out and got discharged. So all my brothers, we had the same Vietnam experience, if you will, at the time back in the day, and came back with different experiences. When I came back, it was not a good time to come back, to be honest with you. We were not received very well. At that time, I didn't know what to do with myself. I was back from Vietnam. 3 days later, I was home walking the streets. Didn't know what to do. Didn't know what my future might look like. I just going through a transitional period. And with I think the government at the time and the people at the time, they got the war mixed up with the warrior. I think we all came back as warriors. We did what we had to do, and to service our country, but we came back and got a terrible reception from everybody. So I immediately thought, well, what's my path forward? What should I do? And so I looked into going back to school, and I heard that there's a GI Bill in place that they pay you to go back to school. I didn't know that at the time. So eventually it took me 3 or 4 years to get my footing. What should I do after my military service? Because I was a very proud veteran, and I lost a lot of Marines in Vietnam, which affected me in a big way for a long time. However, I went back to school on the GI Bill, and I went to Chico State, and I got a degree at Chico State, and I became a teacher for a while. I went to graduate school there, and I became a teacher. And I tried that for a couple of years, and it didn't quite do what I wanted to do, and so I left the teaching field, and I found a job in Santa Rosa, of all places, working for local government, actually helping people find employment and jobs for Sonoma County. So I was kind of like in the government program, H&R program, helping people at that time. And it felt pretty good to get a job where I could help people and make a difference. So I stayed there for a long time in Santa Rosa. I changed jobs in the system so I worked for the mental health department, worked for the courts for a while. I worked for public health for a while. I moved around to get more training and more experience. Then I went back to school to better myself, and I went back to working at the same time. And I found out I could go to school and get paid to do that as well. So I went back to Golden Gate University in San Francisco, obtained my master's degree in public administration and finance. And I thought that would help me with my career, as I was trying to make my way through my employment career. And so I stayed with the county for a long time, but I was working as a volunteer with veterans at the time while working in Sonoma County with a group called Vietnam Veterans of California at the time. That was a nonprofit, and I was on the board of directors for a while, as a volunteer. And all of a sudden, it felt really good to me. Like, my God, I can be helping my fellow brothers and sisters who served in the military. Maybe I can change my field and do something like that.
Yeah.
Well, oddly enough, Jesse, you know how you can't predict the future. You just have doors open. You kind of move through different doors as things open. So the director of the program, they had a job opening in Sacramento. And they said, geez, Don, would you like to leave your safe government job and come to work for Sacramento, helping veterans, working in a nonprofit agency? And at the time I thought, geez, that sounds pretty good, but I had my secure job or I jump into the nonprofit world. And, I gave it about 2 minutes thought and I said, I'm going to do it. I'm a risk taker anyway. I learned
Yeah.
in the Marine Corps, you have to take risk and do what you have to do to save your buddies and save yourself. So I thought, well, here's a chance for me to make a career move to helping veterans and people that I like being with anyway. So Jesse, I gave my notice and then I moved to Sacramento. My wife and I did, and I have never looked back ever since. So that's how I started my 30-year career working with veterans in Sacramento. And so kind of a side issues, I had one brother, he became homeless in Vallejo when I was going to school and when I was working. And he had some alcohol issues and drug issues and everything else. So I remember helping my brother out, and he eventually didn't die on the streets, but eventually went to a rehab program where he died on the streets because of his alcoholism and those other issues. So
Wow.
it hit me personally, not only in my family, plus being a caretaker from my other brother, which I love doing because I would take care of him. But who would have thought? I landed in Sacramento and I was director of a program called the Sacramento Veterans Resource Center.
Mhm.
And we actually opened up a big facility in Sacramento, a 55-bed facility for veterans who needed employment and training services and treatment services in Sacramento. So I landed there doing that. And so what came to be my passion was my job in life. So that's how I became involved in helping veterans. That's my military story, but one thing I always remembered in the military, you never leave anybody behind on the battlefield or actually in country as well. So that core value stayed with me for a long, long time. So when I was actually working in Sacramento for my new job, had a staff of 10 people and we were helping veterans. And I saw for myself a lot of veterans who were homeless on the streets in Sacramento. And at first, to be honest with you, Jesse, I thought, well, that can't be the case. They're veterans, that they came back and served the country. Why are they homeless? And so a friend of mine who was on my board of directors at the time, he was from San Diego, another Vietnam veteran, and he ran a program down there called Vietnam Veterans of San Diego, another nonprofit. And they ran a residential program helping veterans, and they ran a program called Stand Down. And I thought, geez, that sounds interesting. What is a stand down? So he invited me down to San Diego in 1990, and they set up a big, huge tent city. Imagine a MASH tent city, a big tent city like used to see on television, a big football field full of military tents and service providers all lined up like a military base camp. And they brought in over 400 homeless veterans down there in San Diego, and they gave them services for 3 days. And they called that a stand down. And I was down there as a tent leader and as a volunteer to come down to see what it's all about. And the reason they call it a stand down, Jesse, is that in the military, it's a Vietnam term. So when you're in combat out there in the bush for 7 or 8 days or 9 days, they bring you back to the rear for relaxation and recovery, and they call it, and you stand down from combat. So they bring you back to the rear and you stand down for 3 or 4 days. And during that time, because I was I was stood down twice in Vietnam. When I came back to the rear twice and got stood down, they gave you got your rest, recovery, medical help, mental health if you needed it, food, new military uniforms, combat uniforms, ammo, fresh water, recreation. You just stood down for 3 days to recharge your batteries, so you go back again for more. So it's an idea at the Marine Corps. We didn't have that term, but I learned that when I came back home. That's what the Army did. So I was down at San Diego, and I was experienced this 3-day operation, a stand down, and I saw hundreds of these homeless veterans coming in, and this was their safe place for 3 or 4 days, and they got food and mental health and legal help and mental health and food and counseling, and they just got the rest for 3 days off the street. And if you can imagine, as you know, working in that field, being out in the streets, like being in combat. You're by yourself. You can't trust anybody because you're in pain. You might self-medicate, as you might know, obviously, and you might do drugs and alcohol, but just to take the pain away. You don't know your future. You might be hurting. No one has your back. You're running from law enforcement, and you have trust issues, as you well know. So imagine you're a veteran and you're homeless on the street, and you come to a place where you're respected, a safe place, and you're trusted, and you're loved, and you're appreciated, and you're going to get help in a very, very big way. And I stayed there for 3 days, and quite honestly, I'm going, it was like, well, how come the government doesn't do that? This is ran by a nonprofit. And so I came back to Sacramento in 1991 after I experienced that. Again, I was still working for the agency, but I said, I have to do this in Sacramento. We have to do the same thing in Sacramento. And so again, I was doing that on the side as a volunteer. And so I got, I think, 15 or 20 veterans and non-veterans together at what time. And I gathered a group of people. I said, hey, there's this program called Stand Down, helping homeless veterans. And at the time, even the people I was talking to said, we have homeless veterans in this town? Because people didn't know, Jesse, people didn't know if you're a veteran or not a veteran, if you're homeless on the street. So for about 5 or 6 months, I formed this organization, a Stand Down organization, all volunteer driven, with veterans, community leaders, non-veterans, people who wanted to hear about the Stand Down program. I actually had the mayor of Sacramento come out and come out to one of my meetings I had, and her aide came out, and I showed some video about Stand Down in San Diego and what they do and why they do it and what the reason is, and people got more interested, more and more and more.
Nice.
So eventually, we formally formed a group, and we decided to plan to do a big stand down in Sacramento in 1992. Again, these were all volunteers, and I got a lot of support from the community, because at that time, go back to 1992, there were a lot of Vietnam veterans on the street, a lot of them during that time, back in that day. And so we put together a task force. We put together a goal and a mission and a date and when we wanted to do this. And I remember we tried to find a location, which is a big deal, find a big location. We found it at Camp Pollock, which is a base camp for a Boy Scout camp outside of Sacramento, right next to the American River. So it's a huge, it's a Boy Scout camp. So we turned that into a base camp like I saw in San Diego. We were able to get our permits, get all the different planning we had to do, able to secure government tents, like military tents. So we put together 30 military tents in military fashion and planned our first stand down helping homeless veterans. But the real beauty of the stand down is the tents, the location is you have to have the trust of the veterans.
Mhm.
So we went out there along the river and sent out flyers, and we're on the media. We even rented boats to go along the river, 'cause that's where a lot of vets were hanging out on the river at that time, on the bush, in the bush, to promote. We're veterans, helping other veterans. We want to help you come and trust us, get some help. So we did a lot of promotion. We walked the camps. We walked along the rivers. We had TV media promoting our event. And so we had to get the trust of the people, because the people out there in the bush, they were not trusting. We weren't the government. We weren't the city. We weren't the county. We were a nonprofit, but a non-paid group of volunteers. So we were expecting, Jesse, I was expecting about 200 homeless veterans. And by the way, when the veterans come, we'd certify that they're veterans we'd do some paperwork for them to certify they're veterans. But
Yeah.
make a long story short, we had enough beds for 200 veterans. At the end of the first day, we had 400 veterans lined up for services.
Wow.
And we had, quite honestly, I had no idea how many would show up. And there were close to 400 people showed up. And they were in lines and lines and lines and lines and check-in lines. And they were wondering too, are we the real deal?
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, and so eventually they all showed up that morning, and they all got in camp, and we had to make extra beds. We got extra beds and cots and everything. And they came in for 3 days. And the main thing they got, outside of all the services I'll talk about later on, they felt safe for a first time in a long time. After coming off in the streets, they were all torn up and looked raggedy and everything else, of course. But they came in, and the first thing they got was the respect and love from us as a community for the service to the country.
Yeah.
They could not believe how something like that, so important, but was so small to give them a thank you for your service. We're here to help you. Uh,
Mhm.
we're here to assist you any way we can. And we're here for you as long as you need us, at least for 3 days at that time. If you want to sleep in your tent all 3 days and get no services, guess what? They did, because they were chilling out. They were getting rest. If you want to advocate, you want to ask, attain all the services, you can do that as well. But
Yeah.
we had over 40 service providers in place. We had doctors, we had attorneys, we had courts, we had
Wow.
food, we had the VA, we had the vet centers, we had all the service providers you'd have in any other kind of service provider system. Social Security, nonprofits like Roads Home, Volunteers of America, Salvation Army, because they came and did the feeding, and we fed them, we helped them. They got a lot of rest, they had entertainment, they got new
Yeah.
clothes, they got more than it's like a dream to them. Quite frankly, many of them, it's like a dream for them. Like, oh my God, someone actually honors me and is going to help me. One thing about being veterans is that a lot of us, including myself and others, our only shortcoming is we fail to ask for help at times, because we're proud. We're proud we serve our country. We felt we're self-reliant. So we don't forget that sometimes. And even now, the work we do now and Stand Down and other programs I work in, we find veterans who have a hard time asking for help. You probably experience that yourself, Uh, and so, so that I always say we meet veterans where they're at, exactly where they're at. Then we try to move them in a positive direction, whether it's get help, counseling, housing, benefits, referrals, employment and training, food closet. And so we try to move them in a direction where they take another step. I always did say to the veterans, if they take the first step, they'll take the second step. take the third step together, walking together, come up with a plan. So we don't leave them in a situation. But the good thing about Stand Down is the community came together, Jesse, and a lot of media came out there. We didn't do it for the media, but a lot of media came out there, and it was exposed for the first time in Sacramento. Hey, we have a huge problem in Sacramento. Not only do we have homeless on the street, but more importantly, we have veterans who serve their country and they're on the street. And that hit me. It hit the media like a ton of bricks. Like, something's wrong. What can we do to prevent that? How can we help the veterans? Where other groups were getting some help, the veterans were actually getting ignored. No one knew what to do with them. Do you send them to the VA? Do you send them to, where do you send them? So part of our plan was, before they left Stand On after 3 days, and we had entertainment that night. We had movies for them. We have comedians for them. They got the full boat of services, hardcore services, soft services. And before they left the third day, we have like a round table for all the veterans that came, and we passed the microphone for testimonies. We asked them, what did you get out of Stand Down? And many of them sat there and they actually cried for the first time from these hardened veterans. Most of them were in their 30s and 40s at the time, back in the day.
Yeah.
They actually said, someone really appreciates me. And they knew an hour later they'd be back out on the streets, because ours was just a 3-day program. But I can't tell you the human heart and the human spirit, and what they said about, my God, they were so grateful that someone finally acknowledged that they need help.
Yeah.
And more importantly, hope. They had hope for the first time, but they had help. So our mission wasn't over, but for the first time, the sad thing for me, and it still is, Jesse, is that, okay, what do you do after 3 days?
Yeah.
And so that Stand Down is an intervention, a short intervention for a period of time, but we have evolved for the last 20 years now. We do a lot more than just 3 days for the veterans. But when I saw these veterans, and they had new clothing on, they had clothing and boots and shirts and sea bags full of all kind of lights and flashlights and everything that we could give for them. They walk out these huge sea bags full of things they can use in the bush, but they're homeless. They're out there. There's no, where do they go from there? But what that started, though, was every year since then, we still have our organization. The members have changed over the years, you can imagine. New generation of veterans come up, but we still have the same nonprofit group we have, 501c3, about 20 members in our board of directors. And we have homeless veterans who are on our board of directors. In fact, some of our homeless veterans we helped over the years, they have come back and now they've helped run the Stand Downs in the past. So they finally got the help they needed, housing and employment and other things, which you guys do and we do, work with the other organizations. Now they're coming back and giving back to helping other veterans. So it's something to start out as it's a volunteer thing. We had a vision. Our goal really is to assist ending homeless veterans in Sacramento with our other providers and helpers like you and others. Our mission has never changed. Again, I'm founding the organization, very proud of that, but very proud we're still volunteer driven. Everyone on our board is a volunteer. They have other jobs as well. And over the last 29 years, we've helped served over 10,000 homeless veterans, if you add up all the veterans that we've served. But
Wow.
our mission still is, Jesse, you serve one veteran at a time. Yeah, and that's we haven't lost that vision whatsoever. Now our mission is our target population has changed, because we now serve all homeless veterans and their dependents, those that have dependents, and any veteran who's at risk of being homeless. You can have a bed now, as you know, and be couch surfing, but in 2 months, you might be homeless on the street. So we actually serve veterans who are at risk of being homeless. And what's not well known, Jesse, is that National Guard and Reserves, some of them are at the risk of being homeless or on the cliff because they only serve once a month, so they might get part-time pay. But we find some of them actually homeless or potentially homeless as well. So these are Reserve and National Guard who serve their country, still doing it. They find themselves at risk of being homeless. They can come to our office and our organization and get the help that they need. And a big deal too is women veterans have been underserved for a long time. They've been not recognized for what they've done in the service, not recognized what they do when they come home. So we have a very aggressive outreach in helping homeless women veterans come in and get the help as well. So we've kind of branched out to all homeless, young, old, any era. And we actually have a youth program in our stand down where we have a youth who's 17 years old, and he's one of our youth commissioners. He goes out and has the youth programs come and help out our stand down as well. So we've actually gained kids to come in and help out. But the biggest thing outside of all our providers are volunteers. As you probably well know, we could not have done it with our community volunteers, not just our organization, but the volunteers that come every year to put on a 3-day stand down. What we used to do, we'd have at least need 400 volunteers, and they'd come from the community. And most of our volunteers, believe it or not, once they come out and they see what's going on and they feel so good about helping veterans, many of them come back year after year after year.
Wow.
And the other big deal that I really want to give credit to is not only you and others providers in the community who do this on a daily basis. You come to our stand downs every year and have services for them. And a real big deal, we have an event coming up I can talk about in a few minutes, is that the top 3 things is legal services, dental services, and vision services. And this year, our event coming up and real soon, we'll have vision services and dental services and housing services. So without our volunteers in the community, without our veteran service providers in the community, and without the veterans who trust us, we wouldn't be what we do every year. So we are a no wrong door, a one-time shopping, at least at stand down, no wrong door to come in. And our veterans come, and they, over the years now, we are the go-to place every year for veterans to come and get the help that they need. We're very proud of that. And we've been doing this now for almost 30 years. We're going to continue until we end our goal in homelessness in Sacramento. I hope that helps.
Yes, it does. You shared a lot. So, and you answered a lot of my questions that I had on my paper. But I do want to go back a little bit from when you first joined the military. I think you said you were 17 years old or straight out of high school. Is that correct?
Yes, I was. And I was just graduated from high school. Vietnam was cooking up. Vietnam was on the radar. And for myself, I knew personally I wanted to go in and join and serve my country. And I wanted to, in my view, if I wanted to join, I wanted to go to in my view, the toughest outfit I could join.
Yeah.
And I felt like the Marine Corps would fit me better. So I joined the Marine Corps, went to boot camp. My MOS is 0311, which is an infantry. And went through boot camp in San Diego, went to advanced infantry training in Camp Pendleton, stayed there for more infantry training, and was shipped out to Vietnam, and landed in Da Nang at the time. was at Da Nang for 1 week orientation, and shipped out to a rifle company, Marine Corps Rifle Company. My company, 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines, was just a rifle company. I was the 2nd squad, and I stayed with that unit the whole time in Vietnam. And no one prepares you for war until you're in war. I didn't know what to expect. None of us did. And so you either get with the program, if you will, get focused on what you have to do, and do the best job you can, because we're there fighting for what we thought at the time. Then you're fighting for our country and why we're supposed to be there. But you learn once you're in country, you're really fighting for your battle buddy. You're fighting to stay alive every day. You're fighting for to hit your goals and your mission, your fire missions and your combat missions. But and the bottom line is you are there fighting to help your buddy come back home like yourself. I was we were on an operation one time, and this is the Marine Corps spirit of Corps. You do what you have to do. You don't do it for anything else. You do it to save your buddy. I was in Operation Rio Bravo. One time we were crossing a river, a valley, if you will, a swollen rice paddy, and we were opened up. There was a squad of us going across the river.
Yeah.
We're opened up with automatic weapons at us and machine gun fire at us and everything else. And 2 of the people in my squad got hit, and they were killed. Another person was injured, and I we're crossing the river. I pulled him out of the water and saved him, and we patched him up. He went back to the hospital. I didn't do it for this, but I was awarded the Bronze Star with the Combat V for Valor in Vietnam by my company commander. But you didn't do it for that, Jesse. You did it, like you said, for your buddies and what you have to do to bring them safe back to the rear. So I was fortunate. I came back. So I had some scratches, nothing major, but but I learned from the Marine Corps the values of caring for your buddy, do what you have to do, and then more importantly, never leave any battle buddy, never leave anybody behind at whatever cost. And that's the kind of same of stand down. We don't leave anybody behind. So that's my military service. 3 years. I spent 3 years in the Marine Corps. But the real tragedy for me was I came back home and my younger brother went over. He went over because of me. I felt, he saw his older brother coming back. Then that's when he lasted 1 year, and that's when he got shot up pretty bad. Got shot down in Vietnam, and that tore me up for a long time. It still does, and I still carry that. But I was able to take care of him, Jesse, for 15, 20 years in and out of the VA hospital.
Yeah.
So at the time I learned the VA was not doing this. The VA was there, but they could have done better for us, And so the VA has really improved the medical services, but he lasted a long time, but he died of his injuries, and so that's my family military story.
So when you were, because you was pretty much a teenager when you went into the military, how was that? And I know you described some of your experience, but I want to know internally, how was that experience for you personally? Was there any fear? Did you get PTSD? Did any point of time that you regret going because you fear for your life? I just want to know internally, how did you feel? And what was your mental state during that time?
You during Vietnam or after Vietnam?
Before.
Before Vietnam?
Well, I want to know before, when you went into the military, and during Vietnam.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Jesse. Before, quite frankly, I had no fear, because in the Marine Corps, we are trained so well. We are trained so well and so efficiently on how to survive, how to follow orders, how to pay attention to detail, and how to do the carry out your battle plan the best you can. So we were prepared, I thought, very well, uh, and we had the esprit de corps within us in the Marine Corps. You have no fear, you just move forward, you take care of the mission, you get it done. I was trained that way uh, in boot camp in the military, but I was looking for that kind of training at a high school. I didn't want to go to college. I could have. I didn't want to go to college. I wanted to do something different. So I was ready for a change, ready to grow up, if you will, and join the service and do my country proud. And but having all that training and that boot camp training and that camaraderie with other Marines, then Vietnam was, and then we knew we were going to Vietnam. And no one knew what Vietnam was at the time. We were still fighting over there. But our drill instructor said, they told us we're going to Vietnam, and so that's why they're trained us so hard in boot camp.
Yeah.
So we finally got on the airplane, finally flew across country, landed in Vietnam. And I remember when we landed, everyone was quiet. You can hear a pin drop in the room, because all of a sudden it hit us like, wow, we really are here in Vietnam, that type of thing on the plane.
Yeah.
And we were not mortared, but we could hear a small arms fire, outside the airport and everything else. So you could hear the sound of combat, but it wasn't in the airport itself. And so when you got off the plane, it was like 115 degrees. It was hotter than anything I've been experienced. You thought, wow, this is something we just didn't really expect. And I remember, were we scared? Were we unsure what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Were we afraid? But were we purposeful in our thinking? We thought, well, we are trained for this, so we better measure up and stand up, and we better get back on our game plan and follow whatever orders we have to do. But I was in orientation for about 3 days, and they back at Da Nang then, and then they processed our paperwork and gave us our live ammo and gave us everything we needed. And then they the night before I was sent out in the bush in combat, we knew we were going out to way out in the bush out there with a rifle company. At the time, they said, you're going to my company, 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines. And at that time, they were way out there up north on I Corps in Vietnam. And the rumor was, back in the base camp where I was at, these guys, there are some bad dudes, man. They got hit hard. They went through some heavy battles and everything else. And so the night before, helicoptered out, because we got broken up in teams, I thought, holy shit, this is the real deal. And the thing that comes to my mind, quite frankly, is that you better measure up every time. You better measure up. So the 3 of us were flown out to my company, met the company commander. It was a base camp, a not real fancy base camp. Is out there in the bush. You can imagine the smell and the jungles and the heat, and we're like replacements. So you'd be placed. They'd send guys back. We're the newbies of the group. So you join your squad, and I saw my squad leader, and they looked like they just came back from hell.
Wow.
In my eyes. They had what I call the 1,000-yard stare. They really focus, my God. And you thought, again, come back to me, you better measure up. And that was my feeling. And then I knew, we were there at the Real Deal. Uh, we were running patrols at the time. I was a newbie, so I was a newbie at the running. I wasn't running patrols at the time, but I was on patrols. We'd be on night patrols, night ambushes, and eventually I got used to the 24-hour, just the 24-hour energy you need to keep on moving. And eventually, I remember my first firefight. Uh, my buddy next to me wasn't killed, but he was wounded pretty bad. And I remember my squad leader calling the helicopters for a medevacs. Now I knew then at the time that, hey, this is you could be scary, you could be fearful, but you better again use that word, measure up, and do the best you can. And so I carried that with that for my whole 13 months in Vietnam, and more than that. I became a fire team leader. I became a squad leader. I had a squad maybe of a squad normally is like 12 people. We were so short of combat guys. I'd have 9 people in my squad. 9 people. But you learned how to. I was 20 years old running a squad in Vietnam.
Wow.
Yeah, and so we had a lieutenant who was 22 years old running a whole platoon. So if you got wounded, you got sent back to the rear. Then you just had to learn how to step up, and that's what training is all about in the military. You learn how to, if you get trained, if you're automatically, okay, you're it now, you better step up and do what you have to do in all the militaries.
Yeah. Earlier, you stated that when your dad came back from the military, that he did not talk about his experience. Do you feel that sparked a curiosity within you and a motivation to go to find out what your dad had somewhat experienced?
You know what? Thank you. That's a very good question. No one's asked me that before. In fact, I never thought about it. Good question. Yeah, I have to say, I was, we're all proud of the fact that my dad was in the military. He didn't overdo it, because he came back, went back to work, raised a family and everything else. But at that time, even in high school, it was not uncommon to serve your country. It was not uncommon. In fact, it was a way to maybe grow up, if you will, and come back and go back to school and get paid to go back to college. But I remember as a young kid looking at my dad's uniform in the closet. He had to remember looking up at a uniform. He had a whole bunch of badges. I didn't know what they were. He was a first lieutenant in the Army, infantry officer in New Guinea. New Guinea was a very bad spot. They saw a lot of bad action. But I remember my dad going to VFW events when I was a kid. He's a member of the VFW here in Sacramento, in fact, for a long time. And as a kid, they drug 4 of us around to these different social events. My mom and dad would go to the VFW and they'd have parties there and have social things going on.
Yeah.
So I remember at the event I went to, they'd have Pledge of Allegiance and, pledge the flag and patriotic songs and that type of thing. So I kind of grew up in your character, is that it was good to join the military at the time. It was proud. So, but he never did, and I still miss that today. He never did once talk about, I'd never asked, to be honest, at the time. He never did share his experiences in World War II.
Do you feel like he was trying to, in his own way, protect you and your 3 brothers? About, how can I put this? Do you feel like he was kind of trying to protect you guys in a way from actually going to the military based off his experience? Because I'm sure he saw a lot of, violence and shootings and killings and things like that. That probably was very traumatic for him. and he probably just didn't want to relive a lot of it. But at the same time, he probably didn't want to entice you guys to go, even though you guys went and made your own decision to go. But you kind of feel like he was trying to protect you guys a little bit, or just he just chose to keep it to himself.
I think he just chose to keep it to himself. And a lot of older veterans where I eventually came up to help older veterans, and a lot of that generation, they did the same thing. They just they they came back. First, they came back and they were welcomed back. They were welcomed back with open arms, and so, uh, boy, there's go programs to go back to school and jobs and everything else. So I don't think he had a negative. I'm sure his combat experience was terrible, but coming back, he had a great experience. So
Yeah,
he's able to move on with his life and raise his family. For myself and others in my generation, it was absolutely terrible. And we thought,
yeah,
wow, and it's unforgivable. I'll be honest with you. It still tears at my heart at times. And yeah, I'm sure over the years, I came back years later and not only helping veterans and everything else, and my experience, my brother's experience, I did come down with PTSD, and I did
mhm,
get some help for that, and I appreciate that. Myself, I finally asked for help and I got it,
yeah.
but and I appreciate that because the VA did help me out on that. But no, I think my dad he just marched on, if you will, and took care of his other part of his life and everything else. Very loving dad, don't get me wrong, but I never heard him talk about the experiences in World War II.
Okay. Let's fast forward a little bit because we have about like 4 minutes left.
Oh,
I
wow.
want to talk about or want you to talk about the next stand down and what services will be provided, and if you guys will need volunteers, how people
Yeah.
can get
Oh, yeah.
involved.
Thank you, Jesse, for asking that. I'll make it real quick. Okay. Our next event is May 6th through May 8th. It's our 29th annual stand down. It's Friday from 9 to 3, Saturday 9 to 3, Sunday 9 to 12. We're going to have, it's going to be an all-day event, and it's going to be at the Volunteers of America Veteran Services location at 10618 Serrara Avenue, Mather, near the VA hospital. We're going to have our flyers ready in about 3 weeks. They send flyers out to the community, and we're going to be offering, which is a wonderful. We're going to be offering tons of services, via dental services, by the way, vision services, employment housing services by you guys as well, VOA services, uh, vet center services, veteran service officer services. We're going to offer
Right.
clothing services, chaplain services if needed, VA medical, haircuts for everybody, by the way, haircuts for
Nice.
all, VOA housing, employment referrals, food, uh, VSO benefits, counseling, VA
Wow.
mental health counseling, civilian clothing, military clothing, EDD clothing, food, hot food, some entertainment, and a chance to veterans to maybe spend the night as well. We're still looking at that. So over 20 different service providers. And the main thing is you're going to come and get the respect and services that you get every year. And walk away with comfort kits, clothing, and food, and maybe gift cards and maybe bus passes and everything they need to move forward in their lives. And that's, again, it's going to be on coming up real soon. And if you want to volunteer, we need volunteers for stand down. You can go to our website, and our website is, Jesse, sacmelstanddown.org. In sacmelstanddown.org. Our office number is 916-389-8917. And you could call that number or go to our website. We are looking for volunteers for this event. You can go sign up and looking for our fundraisers too. It costs us about $15,000 to $20,000 to do a 3-day stand down. So we are looking for donations. So go to that donation page or link on our stand down and you can help us with our donation as well. So we're looking for volunteers and we're looking for people that want to come out, maybe get involved in our organization as well. So,
Okay.
so we're looking for a lot of people to come help out, and please help our veterans out, because the word homeless veterans should never happen in Sacramento or anywhere. And so please come out on those dates and help us out. Go to our website. You will have flyers. We're giving out to the community. So it's not a hand up. It's not a handout. It's a hand up. So we have their backs and they have our backs. Thank you.
All right, Don, thank you so much for sharing the information. I want to thank you for coming on and just giving us some type of insight about your military experience and giving us insight about the stand down and how people can get involved. We have run out of time, but I'm gonna connect with you again offline, and maybe we can just kind of do another show that's leading up to that, just in case people have more questions or want to get
Okay.
involved. So thank you so much for doing this interview. And that's it for this edition of Mental Health Matters. If you enjoyed this particular show, if you would like to be a guest on the show, or if you would like a DVD copy of the show, please dial 916-366-4600. Thank you.